Hi, my name is Amy Pavlina, and today for this video, I'm going to show you how you can make a collaborative board as a jot lot for students for Social Studies Grade 4, Unit 4, Day 6, the Bill of Rights. So for independent work, students were supposed to look at some scenarios and decide what amendment goes with which scenario, why, and any questions they have about that amendment. So for the wrap-up session of this lesson, when you're coming back together after asynchronous work, students are supposed to share out what they did and how the amendments go with each scenario. So I'm going to show you a way that you could do this on Jamboard. The first thing you're going to do is go to Google. And as you go to Google, you're going to come up here to your waffle and scroll down to Jamboard and click the plus sign to start a new jam. The first thing I like to do is to get the student-friendly version of those amendments on my homepage here. And I've done this already on another Jamboard just so you can see. And I put a little pretty GIF for students to see just to kind of get their attention. You could do this by finding or searching any image that you like. You could say Bill of Rights GIF. If you see the image, you're going to save image, and then you're going to upload the image by clicking on the picture over here. So I did this by saving my image. I click add an image and I just drop it in and I add my picture in that's moving. And it kind of just gets students a little bit more excited to collaborate. So let's look at what I put together for the amendments. One of the big things is students start to see that these amendments go together. And if your students are able to kind of put two and two together about which amendments kind of are coupled together, let them do it. If they're not and they need that support, guide them. Color code it. Jamboard's great for the colors. So I color coded mine. You can put it any way you wish to do it if you're using Jamboard. So I did freedoms and rights of people, and that's Amendment 1 and 2. Freedom of speech, assemble in groups, practice any religion, and the right to bear arms, own guns. Property, anything having to do with property in the first 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights. Government cannot force you to house soldiers, and the government cannot search you or your private property without a reason. So that's anything to do with property, the main topic, and then here are the amendments that go with it. The next one has 4 amendments with it. If accused of a crime. So Amendment 5, you're entitled to a fair trial with a jury. You cannot be tried again for the same thing, no double jeopardy. Amendment 6, you're entitled to a jury of your peers who are not biased. Witnesses have to come forward and you're allowed to have a lawyer. Amendment 7, you have a right to a jury trial. And Amendment 8, the government cannot charge too much bail and they can't charge you too many fines, and they're not allowed to do cruel and unusual punishment while you're in jail or after you're convicted. And then the last category I like to link for students is other rights and who decides those rights. So Amendment 9 has people who can have other rights than what's written in the Constitution. And just because it's not in the Constitution doesn't mean that you don't have that right. The state or people would vote on what kind of power people have. So after going back over this, I want to go into those scenarios. So I would start to do this by clicking on next frame to get a blank slide. Now you could do this a number of ways. One way I like to do it, because I think it's a little bit faster and I get it word for word without having to retype everything, is I'm going to go back into the lesson. And I'm going to go to a scenario. So let's go to scenario 1. A. A student does not want to say the Pledge of Allegiance at the beginning of a school assembly. Their teacher notices and tells them they must say it. So I'm going to press, if I'm using a Windows computer, my window key, Shift and S, and I'm going to get this nice screen grab up here. I'm going to grab the screen by highlighting what I want. And now I have a picture directly from the slides. If I go into Jamboard, I can do a Control V and paste that image directly onto the slide. So now I have the scenario and it's there for me. And I could do this for the rest of the scenarios and then put a line in between and put the questions on Post-its, or I could just take the questions directly from the slides. It's up to you as to what you wish to do. So here's what I did. I put it as what amendment number, how, and I put it with a line in between. So now you want to guide your students. They can go back and forth and you want to kind of have them talk about it, have a discussion about it. A student doesn't want to say the Pledge of Allegiance. So what freedom is this going with? Is this over freedoms and rights? Is this a student's property rights? Have they been convicted of a crime or accused of a crime? Or other rights that aren't in the Constitution? So hopefully your students will say, oh, freedom, the right to free speech, and she doesn't have to do it if she doesn't want to. And then they would go into pick if, okay, are they talking about speech or assembling? Or is it talking about a student's right to own a gun? Hopefully they'll go with Amendment 1. So then they could go back and put Amendment 1, and then they could really discuss how does that go with Amendment 1. And now that they're getting those big topics that you outlined for them originally, they could speak to it. And they could speak to, well, it's talking about freedoms of what people can and cannot do, what they can say and what they cannot say. And by them not saying the Pledge of Allegiance, that's their freedom of speech not to say it. And that doesn't have anything to do with a trial. That doesn't have anything to do with their property. So it must be Amendment 1. Let's look at the next one together. You're going to court because of a disagreement with another member of your community. In addition to the judge, you notice a jury of people from your city. So right away, we're going to see those keywords, and you can point out these keywords to your students by coming up here to the pen and clicking on the paintbrush, and you could actually highlight those important words. So maybe you want to highlight court. Maybe you want to highlight judge. Maybe you want to highlight jury of people from your city. Try to get your students' attention and say, well, where would this go? Would this go under freedom and rights, property, accused of a crime, or other rights and who decides them? So hopefully they're coming into that orange section, and now they can choose between those 4 instead of those 10 amendments. So you're really scaffolding and organizing students' information around those amendments so that they can understand the amendments better and speak to it and have a collaborative discussion as a class. Other scenarios as well, and let me show you what it'll look like once it's done. So if you want to put the other scenarios on here, you don't have to redo all of this by making a new line, making all these new Post-its. You can copy and paste them just by clicking on it and doing a Control-C, and then going to the next page and doing a Control-V. And you could do this for all the Post-its and any shapes or images you put on, as I'm doing right now. So I'm just clicking on the item, and if I right click it, it's not going to come up. I have to do that Control-C or Command-C if you're on a Mac, and that Command-V or Control-C, depending if you're using a Mac or a Windows computer. So now I have my setup just right, how I want it. I could change the color if I want to. And I could go back into the next scenario by, again, going back into the main document. Now I'm going to go to scenario C. I'm going to press my Windows key, the Shift key, and the S key all at once if I'm using a Windows computer. I highlight what I want, and I'm ready to paste it into my Jamboard. So I go to the slide that I wish to put it on, and just by doing that Control-V, I have that nice scenario that I don't have to retype. It's there for me, and I'm ready to go. When you're ready to share your Jamboard with students in your class, you're going to make sure you come up to the share icon right over here. And when you click on share, you're going to change the link to anyone with a link and click editor. Now that your link is open, you can click copy link, and you could drop the link into an assignment, or you could drop the link into your Zoom Meet or your Google Meet, or however you're meeting, your teams meet, and students can automatically come on this while you're presenting. So everything's in live time. Students can even add to it after you're done presenting. Maybe they didn't have a chance to. Maybe they weren't on when you came back on for synchronous instruction. Maybe you're in the classroom, and this is a way that students can collaborate even though they're not so close together. They have that distance between them. I hope that this has been helpful for something that you could use to embed for discussion in your class, to go back over that wrap up where you're sharing the scenario cards with your peers and discussing which amendment from the Bill of Rights applies to your scenario card, how does it apply, and what questions do you have regarding the amendment.